My name is Ava Collins, a 26-year-old data analyst at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions in downtown Chicago. I've always been the quiet type cardigan sweaters, black flats hair in a simple ponytail. The kind of woman no one notices until they need a report finished before lunch. To them, I'm nobody, just Ava, the girl with thrift store tote bags and instant ramen lunches. But today, as soda dripped down my gray cardigan and laughter echoed around me, I realized something: they never really saw me at all. They didn't see the woman who goes home each night to Damian Blake, billionaire CEO of Pierce Enterprises, the man who loves me beyond measure. And as their jeers burned in my ears, I thought only one thing: they're about to find out exactly who I am. They say cruelty starts small, a whisper here, a smirk there. For me, it began with Sienna Moore leaning over my desk, her lips curling around words coated in venom. "Nice sweater, Ava," she said, her Gucci perfume stinging my nose. "Did you borrow it from your grandma's closet?" A few snickers rippled across the morning meeting. I kept my eyes on the budget report in front of me, forcing a smile so small it felt like a wound splitting open. It was easier not to fight back, easier to be silent. But Sienna was never satisfied with silence. By noon, she had gathered her little court Derek Shaw with his slicked back hair and cheap cologne, and Jade Lynn scrolling through Instagram with one manicured finger, ready to film anything humiliating for her followers. "Hey, Ava," Derek called, voice echoing across the open office. "Saw someone like you begging outside the subway this morning. Need a few bucks for lunch." Jade giggled, snapping a photo of my worn tote bag. "Thrift store chic," she whispered, eyes bright with cruel delight. My fingers paused on the keyboard. I felt the heat rising up my neck. I wanted to disappear into my screen, into numbers and patterns, anything to drown out their laughter. I didn't need their approval, I reminded myself. I just needed to survive the day. But survival has a price. By mid-afternoon, they struck again. Sienna sauntered over heels, clacking like gunshots on marble, and dropped a pile of outdated printouts on my desk. Here she purred. "Busy work? We're prepping for a big pitch tomorrow, and you're clearly not doing anything important." I looked at the papers, then back at her. My stomach twisted. "I have my own deadlines," I said softly, praying my voice didn't shake. "Oh, come on," she snapped. "Don't act like you're too good for this. We all know you're just here to fill a seat. What's your story anyway? No friends, no style, no backbone. Did you even graduate college, or did they just hire you out of pity?" Derek snorted, leaning against Jade's desk. "Bet she lives in a basement with 5 cats and no windows." The laughter spread like wildfire. Even Gary Holt, our team lead, glanced over with a smirk before turning back to his laptop. I clasped my trembling hands under the desk. My chest felt tight. Each insult landed like a knife, slicing away pieces of who I was. Still, I refused to crack. Not here, not in front of them. Then Jade lifted her phone again. "Say hi to my followers, Ava. They love charity cases like you." She zoomed in on my scuffed flats. I didn't need to see the caption to know it would drip with scorn. That was when Gary Holt walked by, pausing to throw a crumpled sticky note onto my desk. His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Clock out early if you can't keep up Collins." We don't need dead weight dragging us down. Laughter erupted around me. Sienna clapped her manicured hands, delighted. I stood, my movement slow and deliberate, as if rising from a grave. "I'll finish my work," I whispered. "I always do." "Yeah, go cry somewhere else," Princess Derek sneered. I walked away, each step heavy with humiliation. In the break room, I pressed my shaking fingers to my phone, staring at one contact that felt like salvation: Damian Blake. My husband. Billionaire CEO, the man who once built a ring from twisted copper wire in college when he couldn't afford gold, promising me he'd buy me a castle someday. I didn't want to call him. I didn't want him to see me like this small, broken, humiliated, but that day my strength had run dry. I pressed call. He picked up on the first ring. His voice was low, warm, familiar. "Ava, what's wrong?" My throat closed. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I held them back. "It's nothing. I'm okay." Silence. Then his tone shifted, darkening into something steel-edged. "Tell me." I exhaled shakily. "They're awful, Damien. I don't know how much more I can take. Where are you at the office? I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't move." He hung up before I could protest. I returned to my desk, knowing what was coming, bracing myself. Sienna was waiting, arms crossed, eyes glinting with triumph. "Back already? Thought you'd quit by now." Derek and Jade snickered behind her. Gary watched from his office, smirking over his mug of coffee. I said nothing. My pulse thrummed with dread and something darker, a quiet anticipation I didn't fully understand. 9 minutes later, the elevator dinged. The office fell silent as Damian Blake stepped out. 6'2", broad-shouldered, clad in a tailored charcoal suit that whispered power with every step. His dark hair swept back his jaw, set like carved marble. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes found me immediately. "Ava," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You ready to go?" Relief broke over me like a tide. "Yeah, just give me a minute." I gathered my things with trembling hands, feeling every gaze in the room burning into my back. Sienna finally found her voice. She flipped her hair, her smile wide and fake. "Mr. Blake." "Hi, I'm Sienna Moore, account manager. We weren't expecting you today. Can I get you anything coffee, water?" Damien didn't even glance at her. Instead, he turned to the silent office, his gaze sweeping over them like frost. "Who's been giving my wife a hard time?" The word wife cracked through the air like thunder. Silence fell, heavy, suffocating, and in that silence I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't felt in months. Power. The room froze. Sienna's smile crumbled her lips, parting without sound. Derek swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the floor. Jade's phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering onto her desk. Even Gary Holt stepped out of his office, pale and sweating. Damien's gaze was ice. "Well," he asked softly, though his voice cut deeper than a shout. "Who touched her?" No one answered. He looked at me, his eyes softening for a single heartbeat. "Ava, tell me." I opened my mouth, but words failed me. The months of humiliation had built walls around my voice. Seeing my silence, Damien turned back to them. Sienna Moore, Derek Shaw, Jade Lynn, Gary Holt. He said each name a death sentence. "You're fired. Effective immediately." Sienna gasped, her hands shaking. "Mr. Blake, please. Security is on their way. And don't bother applying anywhere else in Chicago. My name carries weight, and I will make sure every HR department knows exactly who you are." Gary stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Sir, I've been here 5 years, and you let this happen under your watch." Damien's tone never rose, but the menace within it was lethal. "You're done." Sienna lunged toward my desk, her mascara streaked with tears. "You think you're better than us now, Ava, hiding behind your rich husband like a coward. You're pathetic." Her words tried to sink their claws into me, but they didn't hurt anymore. Not with Damien standing beside me like an unbreakable wall. He raised a hand, silencing her final shriek. "Enough. You don't get to rewrite this story. My wife didn't need my power to destroy you. She had her dignity, while you had nothing but cruelty." Security arrived then, moving like shadows as they escorted them out. Their screams and curses faded down the marble hallway, leaving behind only silence. Damien turned to me, his gaze tender now, thumb brushing away a stray tear I hadn't realized had fallen. "You ready to go home?" I nodded, my chest aching with relief. As we walked toward the elevator, I glanced back once. Not at the empty desks, not at the gossiping colleagues, but at my own reflection in the darkened glass. For the first time, I saw not a timid girl hiding in cardigans. I saw Ava Collins, the woman they tried to break, the woman they failed to destroy. The city lights flickered below as we drove home in silence. Chicago glowed in fractured neon and gold, its streets threading between shadows like quiet rivers of light. Damien's hand rested over mine on the leather console, his thumb tracing small, steady circles against my skin. Each touch whispered silently, "You're safe now. They can't touch you again." When we arrived at our penthouse, I peeled off my soda-stained cardigan, fingers trembling slightly as I pulled it from my shoulders. I slipped into a soft cream sweater, its warmth a gentle armor against the cold still clinging to my skin. I stood by the balcony, gazing out at Chicago's endless sprawl of glowing windows and restless traffic. The world moved on as if nothing had happened, as if my humiliation hadn't screamed across glass walls hours earlier, echoing through boardrooms and group chats like blood in water. But inside me, something had shifted. It felt like the final breaking of an old bone, painful, but clean a fracture that would heal stronger. I thought of Sienna's words, spit-flecked and trembling with jealousy. "Pathetic," she hissed, flicking soda from her manicured hand. I thought of Derek's laughter, sharp as broken glass. "God, you're embarrassing," he cackled to Jade, who lifted her phone with gleeful cruelty. And Gary? Always Gary. Watching with bored indifference, scrolling emails as if my public shaming was background noise unworthy of his attention. Their faces blurred now, dissolving into the cold night air beyond the glass, names without weight, voices without power. Damien stepped behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. His warmth sank into my bones, thawing something inside me that had been frozen for years. I leaned back against his chest, closing my eyes as his lips pressed gently to my temple. "You didn't have to destroy them," I whispered into the night, my voice thin as drifting snow. His chest rumbled with a low, dark laugh. "They destroyed themselves, Zyva," he murmured, tightening his arms around me. I just made sure they felt it. I turned slightly in his hold, looking up to meet his gaze under the balcony lights. His eyes were shadowed with unspoken fury, dark and fathomless. But within them glowed a softness only I knew. A softness that cradled my soul when the world turned sharp. "Thank you," I said, voice cracking around the words. Tears pooled in my eyes, blurring the city into gold and midnight. For always seeing me, even when no one else did. He brushed his thumb across my cheek, catching a tear I hadn't felt fall. His touch lingered, a quiet vow etched into skin. "You never needed my power," he said softly. "You've always been stronger than all of them combined." That night, after Damien fell asleep beside me, his breathing deep, and even in the hush of our room, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed everything, their words, their sneers, my silent endurance. But for the first time, the memories didn't tighten around my throat like a noose. For the first time, they felt weightless, powerless, because I had survived them, because I left with my dignity intact, because their cruelty never defined me. It only revealed them. At dawn, I brewed coffee in the quiet kitchen, watching the sun climb between glass towers like a promise of renewal. My reflection shimmered faintly in the window, no longer the timid girl hiding behind thrift store cardigans, hoping not to be noticed, praying not to be hurt. I saw a woman carved out of steel and softness, her gaze calm and unflinching, her heart still gentle despite everything. A woman who knew her worth. I sipped my coffee, slowly feeling warmth spread through my chest. I thought of the boardroom that would whisper my name today, the offices that would search my LinkedIn in secret, curiosity, the people who would wonder how I survived their scorn. I smiled faintly, breathing in the quiet power of morning. "I am Ava Collins," I whispered to my reflection. Not the charity case, not the bullied nobody, not just Mrs. Damien Blake. I am the woman they tried to break and failed to destroy. and that will always be enough. News spread like wildfire. By Monday morning, the entire Chicago corporate district buzzed with whispers about Ava Collins, the quiet analyst at Pinnacle, who turned out to be married to Damian Blake, billionaire CEO of Pierce Enterprises. LinkedIn threads flared with gossip disguised as industry reflections. We must treat everyone with respect. You never know who they really are. Ava Collins, was she always married to Damian Blake? Girl boss goals or corporate plant discussed below. Twitter hummed with memes that flashed across timelines faster than the truth ever could. A grainy photo of me in my oatmeal cardigan sipping black coffee captioned, "Never underestimate the girl in the cardigan." In Pinnacle's HR office, Sienna tried to salvage what remained of her reputation, posting a tearful video about workplace toxicity and misunderstandings. Her mascara streaked down flawless cheeks as she sniffled, "I never meant to hurt anyone." The comments came like knives. "Isn't she the one who bullied that girl for months? Cry harder. Reaping what you sow isn't abuse." Derek bounced between temp jobs, his once cocky smirk replaced by haunted, restless eyes that darted away from every camera lens. Jade vanished from social media entirely, her influencer dreams dissolving like sugar in rain. And Gary Holt. His name disappeared from the industry, blacklisted in silent consensus. No posts, no farewells, just gone. I watched it all unfold from our penthouse balcony, cradling my coffee as dawn broke over the skyline. The sun spilled molten gold across glass towers, each beam catching on frost-bitten steel until the city glowed like a cathedral of ambition. Damien stood beside me reading acquisition reports on his phone, his jaw sharp in the morning light. He looked powerful, untouchable. The city sprawled beneath him like an empire he'd conquered, with nothing but his mind and quiet ruthlessness. But he paused, lowering the phone, turning toward me with an expression that softened all his edges. He tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, letting his fingers linger against my cheek. "You're quiet today," he murmured. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. "I'm just thinking." "About them?" he asked, his tone turning, dark shadows flickering in his eyes. "No." I shook my head, slowly gazed steady on the horizon blooming with sunrise. "About me." Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about what they said, what they thought, what they stole from me. I wasn't replaying their sneers or flinching from old echoes. I was thinking about what I still had, my dignity, my kindness, my quiet strength. They tried to strip those from me piece by piece, day after day. But in the end, all they revealed was their own rot, their own emptiness, their own terrified need to devour what they couldn't become. Damien slipped his arm around my waist, pulling me against his chest. His heart beat steady and strong beneath my ear, a rhythm older than pain, older than vengeance. "You know you never have to work again," he whispered. I closed my eyes, letting his warmth seep into bones still chilled by years of small cruelties. "I know, but you will anyway." He added, his lips curving into a small, knowing smile. "Yes," I breathed, eyes still closed. "I will. Because my work was never for status or money or their approval. It was for me. For the quiet passion that pulsed under my skin when I saw patterns hidden in chaos, when systems bent beneath the sharpness of my mind. A mind as cold and clear as winter air, untouched by their gossip, unbowed by their scorn. Later that week, I signed my resignation papers. Not in defeat, but in triumph. My signature flowed across the page like a river breaking free of an old dam. I didn't need Pinnacle. I didn't need their glass cage or fluorescent-lit cruelty. I would build something of my own, something honest, something real, something that belonged to no one but me. That night, as the city lights flickered below like dying stars, I whispered to my reflection in the darkened window, "I am Ava Collins, the girl they called nobody, the woman they tried to break, the wife of Damian Blake. But most importantly, I placed my palm against the cool glass, feeling my heartbeat echo through steel and silence. I am enough even when the world is blind to it, and in that final quiet I understood that truth, silent, unwavering, unbreakable, is the sharpest power I will ever wield. Months passed. Chicago bloomed into spring pink magnolias unfurling along crowded streets, sunlight glinting off high-rise windows. I spent my mornings in quiet cafes sketching plans into a leather-bound journal. Numbers, projections, business models, my world of logic and calm precision. One day, Damien slid a folder across our kitchen counter. Inside was a deed. To what I asked, brow arching, his lips curved in that faint, knowing smile. Your first office, fully funded, fully yours. I flipped through architectural renderings, an airy, minimalist space overlooking the river. Sunlight flooding across wide desks, a quiet sanctuary for minds like mine. I looked up at him, emotions tightening my chest. Why, I whispered. His gaze softened, dark eyes glowing with pride. Because you've spent your life building everyone else's dreams. It's time you built your own. That afternoon, as construction crews installed glass panels and muted lighting, I stood in the center of my future empire, breathing in sawdust and paint. This was no towering conglomerate, no cutthroat boardroom. It was a boutique analytics consultancy, a place where small businesses could come sit across from me and watch as their chaos turned into clarity under my hands. Word spread quickly. Within weeks, Ava Collins Analytics had clients lined up, small restaurants needing cost optimization, indie brands seeking market pattern insights, even grassroots charities wanting their budgets streamlined. I sat with each of them, cardigan sleeves rolled up pen, tapping gently against spreadsheets, feeling alive in a way Pinnacle never let me be. Sometimes during late evenings, Damien would arrive with takeout and coffee. He'd watch me work, his gaze filled with an awe that still startled me. You look beautiful like this, he'd murmur, watching the glow of my desk lamp illuminate my focused face. I'd smile softly. Like what? Like a queen ruling her own kingdom, he'd say, pressing a kiss to my forehead before leaving me to my quiet empire. One rainy morning, I walked into my office early, the city still cloaked in dawn mist. I set my coffee down and looked around wide desks, potted ferns, pale oak floors. Everything serene, honest, real. My reflection flickered faintly in the window glass. No longer the timid girl in soda-stained cardigans. No longer the silent victim hiding from cruel laughter. I was Ava Collins, builder of empires, architect of clarity, queen of quiet power. I didn't need revenge to win. I didn't need their applause to feel worthy. All I needed was this, a life I built with my own two hands, a dignity no one could strip away, and the unbreakable truth that I was never just his wife. I was always everything on my own. Years from now, no one will remember the names Sienna Moore, Derek Shaw, Jade Lynn, or Gary Holt. Their stories ended the moment mine began, but they will remember Ava Collins. Not for the oatmeal cardigans I wore every Monday, not for the silent lunches eaten alone while scrolling profit loss sheets under fluorescent lights, not even for the day her billionaire husband burned an empire to defend her dignity. They will remember me for what came after. I remember that day in the break room. "Hey," Ava Derrick said, with a smirk pointing to the coffee stains spreading across my blouse. "Might want to fix yourself up before the staff meeting." Jade laughed softly, stirring her green tea. She's lucky anyone even notices. Gary looked up from his phone just long enough to add, "Pathetic." I remember standing there clutching my chipped mug heat, rising to my face, hearing Sienna's voice cut through the laughter. "Don't worry about it. Some people are just born to blend in." For a moment, I believed them. I believed I was nothing more than soft apologies and quiet exits. The girl no one saw. The analyst who wrote reports so precise they erased her existence in the process. I burned myself down to keep them warm, typing late into the night to fix their errors, rewriting slides so their promotion stayed intact. But life has a way of revealing truths in brutal beauty. Because now when they speak my name, their voices falter. They will remember the woman who rose from humiliation, brushed soda and scorn from her cardigan, lifted her chin, and built an empire out of quiet brilliance. They will remember the analyst who turned her mind into a weapon not to destroy, but to carve clarity from chaos, to build bridges across ravines they never even saw. I stand by my office window as night settles over Chicago skyscrapers, carving indigo skies into sharp angles of gold-lit glass. Thousands of windows glow like small altars to ambition. Damien's reflection appears behind mine, tall, steady, his hand resting lightly on my waist. His voice is a low murmur against my ear. Long day, Ava. I nod, eyes locked on the city. Long but worth it. He leans closer. You know you terrify them, don't you? A smile flickers across my lips. Good. Tonight I do not lean back for comfort. Tonight I stand tall in my own silhouette, seeing not his face behind me, but my own reflected back, unflinching, unbowed. I think of every woman belittled for her softness, every girl mocked for her simplicity, every mother, sister, daughter dismissed for her silence. And I whisper into the dark glass as if speaking to each of them. They don't know what we're made of. I promise this. Your quiet is not weakness, I say to the girl eating alone in a college library, pages stained with tears she wipes before anyone sees. Your dignity is not invisibility. I say to the woman biting her tongue in board meetings, knuckles white from gripping hope too tightly. Your kindness is not submission. I say to the mother folding laundry at midnight, humming lullabies to sleeping children while her own dreams gather dust in the corners. They will underestimate you. They will laugh at you. They will strip you down to nothing. Let them. Because one day when you rise and you will rise, your power will burn them to ash without you ever lifting a hand. Damien's hand tightens slightly on my waist. You've changed everything, Ava. I smile faintly, eyes unblinking at the city's endless lights. No, I whisper. I didn't change everything. I just remembered who I was before they told me who to be. I turn from the window, walking back to my desk, heels echoing across marble like quiet thunder. My phone buzzes with the next crisis, the next client demanding clarity only I can bring. I answer calmly, decisively, each word, another brick in the empire built under my name. I am Ava Collins, once the girl no one saw, now the woman they cannot forget. I do not need thrones or crowns. I do not need their applause or validation. My legacy is this, a life built in my name, a dignity they could never touch, a quiet so powerful it echoes long after I am gone. And in that quiet, my truth remains unbreakable. They thought I was nothing, but I became everything they couldn't silence. Tonight, as Chicago hums with cold December winds, I sit behind my desk empire, glowing beyond the glass. I close my eyes and breathe deeply, feeling the peace I carved from chaos. I whisper to myself softly but fiercely, this is my throne, my crown, my eternity. Then I open my eyes sharper than the city lights and begin my next chapter. It is winter again. Snow falls like silent ash across Chicago, blanketing rooftops in hushed white, softening the neon glow of sleepless streets below. In my office, a candle flickers against the glass, its reflection trembling beside mine. Two flames dancing in a silent communion of light. I sip my coffee slowly, breathing in roasted warmth and midnight quiet. Behind me, files sit in perfect stacks, Contracts signed, futures secured. My empire hums with a quiet living pulse, analyst typing with focused, calm sunlight drifting across pale oak floors in ribbons of gentle gold. The door opens without a sound. Damien enters, his footsteps silent on polished wood. He comes up behind me, arms wrapping around my shoulders with practiced tenderness. His warmth seeps into me, steady and sure. For a moment, I close my eyes, letting myself lean back just enough to feel the thrum of his heartbeat against my spine. He presses his lips to my hair. "You built something beautiful here," he whispers. A faint smile curves my lips, but my eyes remain fixed on the snow falling beyond the window. "I didn't build it for beauty," I murmur. "I built it for truth." He rests his chin lightly on my shoulder, saying nothing, letting silence speak. "Because the world tried to define me. By what I wore, by where I came from, by who I married. They looked at the thrift store cardigans, the quiet lunches eaten alone, and thought they saw weakness. They didn't understand. I was never just the girl in oatmeal sweaters scribbling notes in the corner conference room. I was never just Mrs. Damian Blake, the quiet analyst behind the CEO's empire. I was always Ava Collins, the girl with a mind sharp as winter air, the woman with dignity woven into every bone. The woman who watched, listened, waited, and when the moment came, rose without apology. Sometimes I hear their voices echoing down old hallways of memory. She's harmless. She'll never last here. She should be grateful anyone even notices her. I close my eyes and whisper to their shadows, "Thank you for underestimating me." Because now when people speak my name, they do not speak of humiliation or pity. They speak of quiet power, of precision, of a woman who burned no one yet still left ashes in her wake. Damien's arms tighten around me. Snow continues to fall, each flake dissolving against the glass like whispered confessions. I think of every woman still sitting alone in break rooms, eating silent lunches while their hearts thunder with dreams they fear to name. I think of every girl told her softness was a flaw, her kindness a weakness, her quiet an absence of worth. And I promise them this: your softness is not weakness. Your quiet is not invisibility. Your kindness is not submission. Let them mock, let them underestimate, let them laugh. Because one day when you rise, and you will rise, your power will turn their laughter to silence, their scorn to ashes, without you ever lifting a hand. In that silent, endless winter night, I breathe in a truth so final it almost hurts. I did not just survive them. I outlived them. And in the quiet echo of my name, spoken long after their voices fade, I will outlast them too. I open my eyes, feeling Damien's steady heartbeat against my back, the candle flickering beside my reflection, and the snow falling beyond the glass in endless forgiving silence. I whisper softly to myself, and to the night I am Ava Collins. I do not need thrones or crowns. This quiet is my reign, and my reign will never end. Years passed. The city changed. Glass towers rose like crystal knives against the sky. Old brick streets were torn down and paved over with polished ambition. Cafes turned into co-working spaces, bookstores into banks. But through it all, my life remained quiet and steady like an ancient river flowing beneath frozen winter, unseen, silent, unstoppable. One evening, after 12 hours of negotiations and signatures that shifted millions with a flick of my pen, I walked alone along the river walk. The lamps cast pools of golden light across black water, shimmering softly as snow fell in drifting silence, each flake dissolving into the river's dark embrace. People rushed past me, heads bowed, eyes locked on glowing screens, breath fogging in hurried sighs. But I walked slowly, feeling each step ground me deeper into myself, each inhale sharpening the cold air into something clean and true. At a small bridge, I paused. Resting my hands on iron railings, chilled by winter, I let the city's hum fade until there was only the quiet lapping of water below. I gazed into the black mirror of the river and saw my reflection. She was not the girl they remembered, not the girl with flushed cheeks and trembling hands clutching her coffee cup like a shield, not the silent analyst mocked for her thrift store cardigans, her plain speech, her simplicity mistaken for absence. No. In that quiet reflection, I saw a woman carved from storms and moonlight eyes clear as winter dawn's shoulders unbowed. Her gaze was steady, her heart quiet, her dignity unbreakable. A woman who lost nothing because what she gave was never theirs to keep. I closed my eyes, letting the wind slice across my cheekbones, numbing the old aches. And in that silence, I whispered to the darkness, "They took nothing from me. They only showed me what was never theirs to touch." Footsteps approached. I felt his presence before I heard him. Damien stepped beside me without a word. For a long moment he said nothing, only slipped his hand into mine, his grip strong and sure, anchoring me to this moment, to this truth, to this life I built from ruins and silence. We stood there, two quiet figures in a sleeping city, breathing in frozen air that smelled of snow and possibility. He turned to me, eyes dark and fathomless, reflecting the scattered streetlight and falling flakes. "Are you happy?" he asked softly, his voice a question wrapped in worry and wonder. I turned my face toward him, my lips curving into a faint, peaceful smile. Under the quiet glow of a world blanketed in white, I whispered, "Happiness isn't the goal," I said. "Peace is." And tonight, wrapped in winter's hush with his hand holding mine, this man who saw me before the world ever did, who never tried to define me, only stand beside me, I felt it. Peace. Because true power is not in revenge, not in empire, not in fear or worship. True power is walking away with your dignity intact, your heart unburned, your soul unbowed. True power is the quiet certainty that you owe no one your suffering. I am Ava Collins, not a legend built by headlines, not a queen crowned by public envy, not a billionaire's wife defined by another's wealth. I am simply a woman who chose herself and never looked back. And in that final silence, as snow kissed the dark river and city lights shimmered like distant stars, I knew they would spend the rest of their lives trying to forget me. But I would spend the rest of mine never thinking of them again. Decades later, when my hair turned silver soft as winter light and the lines on my face traced every silent victory I ever won, I still woke before dawn. I still brewed my coffee in darkness, hands moving with quiet ritual, feeling the warmth seep into my bones as I watched the city slowly ignite beneath a sky turning from black to cobalt to fragile gold. Damien slept in the other room, his breathing deep and steady, his once dark hair now streaked with gray. He aged alongside me with a quiet grace love softening the edges of years that carved us into who we became. I stood by the balcony window feeling winter's chill seep through glass that held back the world and thought about life's simple truths. Cruelty is loud roaring like fire through dead forests, devouring everything in its path. But dignity is silent, like snowfall in the hours before dawn. Hate burns bright, so bright it blinds, but it burns out fast, leaving only cold embers. True strength is quiet. It endures long after the world has forgotten your name. But mine they never forgot. Somewhere in boardrooms I never stepped into, under fluorescent lights and flickering projectors, they still whispered about me, the analyst who became an empire. They told stories of Ava Collins, the girl mocked for cardigans and homemade lunches, the woman who left behind only her silence. And yet somehow her silence echoed louder than any scream they ever uttered. In my final years, young women often came to me, their eyes bright with unspoken questions. Over steaming mugs of tea, they would ask softly, "How did you survive them? How did you become this?" I would smile, then feeling the lines deepen at the corners of my eyes, each one a testimony to laughter and grief and mornings like this. I didn't survive them, I'd whisper, voice steady as dawn. I outlasted them. because I never wasted my life proving them wrong. I spent it becoming someone they could never reach, and they would nod their eyes, glimmering with tears they refused to let fall, clutching those words to their chests like quiet prayers. When my last morning came, I rose before dawn, as always the habit of a lifetime etched into marrow. I brewed one final cup of coffee, inhaling its bitter warmth, letting it bloom through my chest. Then I sat by the balcony watching the sun rise over a city that once broke me but never buried me. The sky bled pink and gold spilling light across skyscrapers and bridges and frozen lake. I watched the world awaken one last time, my breathing slow, my heart steady. I left behind no grand speeches, no public farewells, only a simple note written in looping cursive on creamy stationery I was never theirs to define. I was always mine. I am Ava Collins. Not a story of revenge, but a story of quiet rebirth. The woman they tried to break, who walked away unbowed, who built her life from silence and steel, and lived the rest of her days in a peace so powerful it became her eternal name. Because in the end I learned true power is not in roaring louder. It is in walking away so completely that their echoes can never reach you again. Thank you for staying with me until the end of I's story. Writing her journey reminded me of my own silent strengths, and I hope it reminded you of yours too. I'll see you next time with another story that cuts deep and heals quietly. Until then, take care of your heart. Darkness, hands moving with quiet ritual, feeling the warmth seep into my bones as I watch the city slowly ignite beneath a sky turning from black to cobalt to fragile gold. Damien slept in the other room, his breathing deep and steady, his once dark hair now streaked with gray. He aged alongside me with a quiet grace love softening the edges of years that carved us into who we became. I stood by the balcony window, feeling winter's chill seep through glass that held back the world, and thought about life's simple truths. Cruelty is loud roaring like fire through dead forests, devouring everything in its path. But dignity is silent, like snowfall in the hours before dawn. Hate burns bright, so bright it blinds, but it burns out fast, leaving only cold embers. True strength is quiet. It endures long after the world has forgotten your name. But mine they never forgot. Somewhere in boardrooms I never stepped into, under fluorescent lights and flickering projectors, they still whispered about me, the analyst who became an empire. They told stories of Ava Collins, the girl mocked for cardigans and homemade lunches, the woman who left behind only her silence. And yet somehow her silence echoed louder than any scream they ever uttered. In my final years, young women often came to me, their eyes bright with unspoken questions. Over steaming mugs of tea, they would ask softly, "How did you survive them? How did you become this?" I would smile, then feeling the lines deepen at the corners of my eyes, each one a testimony to laughter and grief and mornings like this. I didn't survive them, I'd whisper, voice steady as dawn. I outlasted them, because I never wasted my life proving them wrong. I spent it becoming someone they could never reach, and they would nod their eyes, glimmering with tears they refused to let fall, clutching those words to their chests like quiet prayers. When my last morning came, I rose before dawn, as always the habit of a lifetime etched into marrow. I brewed one final cup of coffee, inhaling its bitter warmth, letting it bloom through my chest. Then I sat by the balcony watching the sun rise over a city that once broke me but never buried me. The sky bled pink and gold spilling light across skyscrapers and bridges and frozen lake. I watched the world awaken one last time, my breathing slow, my heart steady. I left behind no grand speeches, no public farewells, only a simple note written in looping cursive on creamy stationery I was never theirs to define. I was always mine. I am Ava Collins. Not a story of revenge, but a story of quiet rebirth. The woman they tried to break, who walked away unbowed, who built her life from silence and steel, and lived the rest of her days in a peace so powerful it became her eternal name. Because in the end, I learned true power is not in roaring louder. It is in walking away so completely that their echoes can never reach you again. Thank you for staying with me until the end of I Story. Writing her journey reminded me of my own silent strengths, and I hope it reminded you of yours too. I'll see you next time with another story that cuts deep and heals quietly. Until then, take care of your heart